How's it going, everybody? Jake from Boatman UK here. I'm finally getting around to doing a video that's been highly requested, which is a instruction or user guide, I guess you could say, for our Vulcan GPS and Vulcan Pro bait boat. So we'll be going through remote layout and button layout. We'll be going through how to navigate your GPS, some hints and tips, and also your sonar, what the colours mean on the sonar screen, what the readings mean, etc, etc. So if you're anything like me, I often end up looking at how to use something before I even own it. Us guys don't have a tendency of looking at manuals, and I much prefer to watch a video, and I know a lot of you out there have been requesting this, so hopefully this video helps. So we'll start off by taking a look at the remote. So here we have our Vulcan remote. This is actually a Pro model, the sonar screen on top, but the GPS remote, you just don't have the sonar screen, so it's a two-in-one really, so you can use this for both a Pro and a GPS. We will start off with the screen here at the top. We'll try and cover everything in as great a detail as we can. Some of it probably seems self-explanatory, but I like to try and cover these in much detail as I can. So we'll start with our top left. So top left, as you see, has just gone from 0 to 14. That is our GPS satellite connection. So that was a representation of how many satellites we're currently connected to on GPS. Obviously on the Vulcan you can get up to 60. It's very rare where you'll see a number that high. It's usually around an average of 30 to 40. But that will confirm your GPS strength. Next to that, to our right, we have our signal strength, which is the actual signal strength from the remote to the boat. So these have a range of 500 meters, and you won't really notice this drop much unless you're sort of a good 300 meters, 200 to 300 meters of range. Then you might notice that move, but that is your signal strength from the boat to the remote. Next along here, we have our cursor. So at the moment, the boat is not moving. I'm not moving the toggle stick. If I operate a toggle stick, you'll see that that changes depending on which direction I move. So that's basically just a cursor direction, just as a reference. This here is what we're currently set to in terms of distance, let's say, to our GPS spots. So that is M for meters, and it can be cycled and changed to foot or feet, which I will show you how to do in a moment in the settings menu. To the right of that, we have two battery tabs. We have B and R. B for boat, R for remote. Self-explanatory what those mean. And then here we've got a few more things going on. So this essentially is all to do with your GPS side. So we have numbers all the way ranging from 1 to 16. These are your saved locations. At the moment, as you can see, we currently have no saved locations because all the boxes are grey. You will see that number 1 is outlined in purple. That is the current GPS location we are hovering over. And if I cycle between that using this little directional pad here, you will see that the purple box will move along. And I will just quickly now just demonstrate when you save a point what will happen. So if you press save point, you will see that that box will go green. But again, I'll move into the GPS side in a bit more detail in a moment. So here you will see you've got P, N and H. P is your position, so that's your current save spot that you're hovering over, and that'll tell you how far away your save spot is. If you hover over one that doesn't have a save location like so, you will see that it will just say nothing. So at the moment we are currently hovering over our one save spot, which is actually not even in the water, so you'll see that 0, and that just so you know exactly which save spot it is roughly. N is for when it's navigating, and that will tell you how far away it is from that specific save position. And H is your home point. You'll see a little house there. So what we'll do is we'll save our home point as well, and you'll see that also change. Origin set OK, and you'll see that should now go to 0 as well, because we're currently hovering over the same point as our save point. So that's our home point essentially. And again, GPS I will cover in greater detail in just a moment. Moving to the right, we have L and R, which are left hopper, right hopper. So you can open the hoppers individually or actuate them together. So for example, if I operate the left hopper, you will see that that now shows as a red symbol showing that hopper is open. And you also have just here is what is called bow direction, which again you can adjust in the settings. So this represents the direction the boat is facing, and it's just a nice little feature. It makes absolutely no difference to the GPS navigation or anything like that, but it's just a nice little thing so you can see the orientation of the boat if you for some reason lose sight of it. Last thing to discuss is here we have M, which is actually our speed settings. So we have 3 speed settings, which we can cycle through by pressing the speed button. You have H for high, M for medium, and L for low. High, if I remember correctly, is 60 meters a minute. Medium is 45, and low, I believe, is 30. I'm sure this is covered in the manual, and I should probably know this by now, but I'm sure that's correct. Moving down to the actual buttons and operations of this remote, we will have a bit more in depth in a minute of the menu, so we'll just go through the basics. So we have along the top, we have one button that isn't used, which is hook release. The Vulcan, of course, doesn't have that feature because it has the fold-out top door for your top-loading rig. So we have left hopper, middle hopper, and right hopper. Left and right hopper are self-explanatory. Middle hopper will open both your hoppers together. You have your speed button, which I just discussed a moment ago. And to the right of that, we have a forward button, which engages auto forward. You can engage auto forward by holding the directional joystick forward for 5 seconds. It will automatically engage, or you can just single press the forward button and you'll see your position cursor changes to a little arrow with the number 1. You can press this up to 3 times. So if I press it again, it says 2. If I press it again, it says 3. So that basically, the number represents how many minutes of auto forward. So I've currently engaged 3 minutes of auto forward. Here you have your lamp button, so that is how you operate your headlights. Single press will turn them on or off, and if you press and hold, it will turn the rear lights and everything off altogether. Here we have our menu button, which is what I will come back to in a moment because there's a much more in depth needed there, so we'll come back to that. Here, left, right, and OK are used for navigating through the menu or through your GPS coordinates. So if we use left and right, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video or beginning of the remote display, you will see that it changes the purple outline to whichever safe position you want to navigate to. And you also press OK when you're in the menu screen. So again, we'll come back to that. Just at the bottom here is all our navigation side. So the nice thing about the Vulcan remote is your GPS navigation is set out ever so simple. You have literally 3 buttons you need to worry about. You have your home point, which you press and hold to actually store your home point. You have navigation and return, which is a multi-function button. So a single press will allow you to navigate. So for example, if I go to my spot that I have saved, it will allow me to bring up this screen, and I will just cancel that before I go on to that. And if I press and hold it, it will actually operate as the return function, which will return to home. To the right of that, we have save point, which, as I mentioned again towards the beginning of the remote display, that will allow you to save a location. So we'll save another one here just for the sake of the video. And then lastly, we have our power button. Press and hold to turn the remote on and off, and a single tap will operate the background lights of the buttons. It's far too bright outside to see that, but a single press will actually power those background lights on. So I think now what we'll do is we'll go into the menu and we'll just go for a couple of things and a couple of recommended settings as well, and essentially what each thing means. So there's going to be a lot of things on here that you do not need to pay any attention to, and I will advise which ones you do and which ones you don't. So straight travel is one of those things that you do not need to pay any attention to. Essentially, that is the same as pressing auto forward. I don't really know why they have it as a second function on here, but there you go. And in order to exit off something, so if you're in menu and you click on something and you want to know how to get out, press menu again, and that will take you off that screen. Here, option number 2, we have set bow direction, which, as I mentioned a moment ago, is this part on the menu. If I just press menu, and get out of the menu, you will see that's that bow direction that I mentioned, which is the orientation of the boat. So if we go on to that, you'll see it says keep the boat facing forward and press enter. So on a flat ground or on the water itself, you want to make sure the boat is facing dead straight forward and you're dead straight behind it, and that will set your orientation for your bow direction. Now, this does need to be adjusted every now and then. It does go out of synchronization over time, but it's dead easy to do. So next we have set home point, which is the exact same as pressing that button there, so you don't need to pay any attention to that. We have remote pairing, which again you shouldn't need to do. The only time you need to pair the remote is if you have a replacement remote. You should never need to repair the remote. It should always remain paired unless there's an issue. Option 5, we have travel speed, which you can see is currently selected to 50% because we're currently in medium speed. You can adjust the speed settings if you want to, but I recommend to keep this where it's set to because it allows you to get optimum battery life. If we press menu again, you will see on this little left-hand side here, you'll see that the blue highlighted part changes to another part. So there's actually 3 submenus and then exit. So we're now on submenu 2, which is where one of the most important features is, which is compass calibration. Compass calibration is used for your GPS navigation and also used for auto forward and assists the boat with sailing straight, and also assists with the actual north, south, east, west side of things for the GPS as well. So this part is essential, and compass calibration is something that I'll go into detail of in a moment when I go through the GPS display. We have offset adjustment next, which is sometimes needed. So if you're finding for one reason or another, if the boat is veering to one direction, so over a straight travel, it's veering left, for example, you'd go on to offset adjustment, and you'll see this display here. you can actually see, as a matter of fact, I've actually put a small amount, the number 30, into the right hand motor to take some drive out of the left and put it into the right. So you can do increments of either 10 at a time or 1. And to navigate through this, again, you're just using these two D-pads here, left and right. As you can see, the red box is what you are currently selecting. So for example, if I want to take that out, so if I want to go a bit more left, you'll see it takes some out of the right by going that to 20. And you can also, if I go back here, if you have a problem and you set it and it all goes wrong, you have like a fail safe, a get out of jail card by pressing reset, as you can see here. And then you also have a compass on or off. If for whatever reason you feel like your compass is having a bit of a moment, you can turn it on and off. You should never need to operate this. And of course, it goes without saying, keep it on at all times. So that covers your offset adjustments. The numbers 10 and 1, obviously 10 is quite a big increment at a time, so I recommend just going in 10s at a time, and then you can use the 1s to really fine tune it. Again, this automatically saves when you press menu and come out of it. Next up is Navi calibration. Navi calibration is something quite important, and that can vary and differ a little bit. So essentially, to try and explain what Navi calibration means in the easiest terms, if you have a save spot and you're finding that the boat is constantly going a touch to the left or a touch to the right of that save spot, you can use Navi calibration to really fine tune and bring the boat into where you want it to be. And again, this is only used if it's consistently doing that one thing. So if your save spot is, let's say as a reference point, let's say it's over there, but it's constantly going over here, you'd use Navi calibration to assist with that. So the lower the number, the more leftward it would go, and the higher the number, the more rightward it would go. Now, this number goes all the way to 360, so you can get this extremely wrong, and you only need fine-tuning increments at a time. Again, if you use the plus 10 feature, that would change from 85 to 95, and you will find that will make quite a big difference. And again, you can use plus 1 and minus 1, plus 10 and minus 10, and that will allow you to really fine tune it. My personal recommendation is 85 to 90 tends to be the safe go-to. Again, you can explore with this, but the only problem is with this, there isn't a reset, so make sure you keep a note of where it was beforehand. If you find for some reason your boat is in a random number like the high 200s, you'll actually find it will probably head the opposite direction. It goes that far out. So highly advise that this is around 80, 85 to 90. And once you've done it, make sure you click save, because unlike offset adjustment, you do have to physically save this. Otherwise, it will just reset to whatever it was before. Next up, we have radio configuration. I'm not going to go into that. That is essentially for diagnostics. You do not need to pay any attention to that. We have switch units as number 5, which is how you switch between meters and feet. I personally do prefer feet, so I'm going to set that back to feet. As you can see, it's exited out of the menu, so we have to go back into it again. But that covers all of the second sub-menu. So let's go into the third, where, again, pretty much all of this here should not be needed. Debug on, debug off, again, is all to do with diagnostics. SW version is also to do with your serial code. Again, you do not need to know any of that. Number 4 is quite an important one. This is your language, your dialogue. So for some reason, if you find that your boat has been set to be in some random language, which I'm assuming is some form of Chinese, you will see when we go into menu, oh no, it's all in a foreign language. But not to worry, it's super easy to fix. If you press, remember we were in the third sub-menu, so we press menu again and again, you will see, luckily, they have actually added /English, just so you know, as a failsafe, you know how to get back to changing your language. All you need to hit is OK, and it will automatically default back to English, because this is a British Boatman Vulcan, so it automatically knows in the actual software to automatically set to English. So if you have a moment, you know exactly how to get back. And lastly, option number 5 is our backlighting, and essentially that's just the brightness of the back screen. I'm not going to bother adjusting that. If we press menu one more time, you'll see that we can hit exit. Or alternatively, instead of having to cycle through the menu all the way like this to exit, you can actually just press and hold the menu button for 2 seconds, and it will automatically exit for you. So I think that pretty much covers the remote. So I think now we will move to our sonar screen. Okay, so here we have our sonar screen. So if you only have a GPS model, you can actually skip this section entirely. If you have a Pro model, however, you're probably going to want to stick around. So here is our display. And again, we'll start from the top left. We have our foot or our depth reading just here. As you can see, where I am in this little pond here, it fluctuates a hell of a lot. We have the boat in the water, but you will see some bizarre readings, which I'll explain and go through in a moment. So that is our depth reading. Here is our water temperature. This is our battery life of the sonar screen. Here we have our signal strength. the channel we're currently connected to, which you don't really need to worry about, or you shouldn't really ever need to access, but I'll explain how to do so if you should need to in a moment. And then that's pretty much everything. You then have the important part, which is your display. So here on the Vulcan, we have one single frequency, so you can't switch frequencies, so you don't have to worry about any of this here. All you need to worry about is what you're seeing on the screen. So here on the screen, you will see a multitude of different colors. And on the blue background, which is the one that I always like to use, red is like a soft, so that would be like a silt. It would be leaves or even weed. Where we are currently, there's a hell of a lot of like sort of sediment and also leaves. So for example, if I sail this under a tree, which I'm just doing now in the background, you might well see that it will pick up even more. You can kind of see, yeah, you can see, because there's obviously going to be leaves on the in the water there. So we've got a lot of soft ground or soft surface, and then you have a green, which is sort of like a medium. So that would be, a green would represent like a clay or a hard mud. And then there's not really much of it here, but normally sometimes you'll see there's a little bit of yellow here and there. Sometimes you have a yellow bottom, which would be gravel, or anything like that, like stone, for example. So essentially this is telling you what type of bottom that you have. Now, of course, the sonar for the Boatman range is a feature finder. It does have a fish finding feature, but its priority is to be a feature finder. And unfortunately, I'm not fishing. Well, I'm not fishing at all. I'm just testing the boat in our little test lake or test pond, and it doesn't really represent the best of features because it's pretty featureless. You can see there's a couple of little things there. Anyway, here we have our echo transducer, so you can see what's going on and what it's doing. And we have our little directional arrows here, which allow you to navigate through the menu. Here we have a zoom feature, which is actually new to these new models, which is actually quite nice. It'll allow you to really zoom in and focus on one particular area. So, you know, you've got a zoomed in feature there, and it will show you what you're hovering over right now. So if there's something that you see that you want to take a closer look at, if there's a really, really small drop off or anything like that, you can use the zoom feature, and you can either use the button to escape, or you just press it again and you'll come out of it again. Escape is for escaping out of the menu. This is your power button, so you press and hold to turn it on or off. And this is our actual settings menu. So here is some recommended settings. This isn't going to apply to everybody, and the user manual does have some really good recommendations in it as well, which I do recommend to follow, because water depth and clarity will also make a difference. So the water here is quite dirty. It is a pond. There's a lot of all sorts of stuff in here, and it does affect the sonar quite massively. So I have to have my sensitivity quite low. So sensitivity, so for example, what I will do is I will just turn my sensitivity right up, and you will see if I turn it right up, you'll see it goes kind of crazy. That's basically because it's overly sensitive now, and it's picking up all sorts of stuff on the surface, etc, etc. So I recommend, if you're fishing somewhere quite shallow like this is no more than 6 foot, and the water is really quite dirty, around a 50% sensitivity, give or take. The lower the sensitivity, technically the less accurate it's going to be at picking up, but it's a case of you have to fine tune it and find that balance depending on where you are. Next one down, we have chirp. The best way I can describe chirp, because that's also a new feature, is it is the definition of what you're seeing here. So it's really, really fine. It doesn't make a massive difference, but if I turn the chirp up, you might just see the colours just change ever so slightly. Now this is really, really fine, and in my opinion doesn't need worrying about too much in the settings. I personally always tend to set it around 60%, because I think that's what they say in the manual. This setting really isn't massively important, unlike sensitivity, which is pretty critical. Next up, we have our depth range, which you can change, which will change the aspect ratio of what you're reading. Always set this to auto. You can change from 0 to 120 feet, and as you can see, the reading is kind of crazy. You have 0 to 90, 0 to 60, 0 to 30, 0 to 15, 0 to 9, and that is the lowest you can go. I always just set it to auto. It automatically figures itself out, and if you all of a sudden go into a drop off with some deep water, it's going to automatically adjust for you, so just keep that in auto. Next down, we have fish symbols / depth on. So fish symbols on basically means that your fish finding feature is on, so it will display fish. And then the second on is for the depth, which means it will tell you what depth. So if it sees a fish and it picks it up on the fish finder, next to that it will have a little depth reading, so it tells you where that was at. And I will give some advice on this in just a moment. Next up, we have simulator, which you can ignore. Simulator is purely for display purposes, and it's like when you go to Halfords and you see the radios on the side doing all sorts of crazy things. That's exactly what simulator's for. So if you turn your sonar screen on and it's going Larry and it's not even in the water, check and make sure you've got simulator set to off. Next up, we have backlight, which again, self-explanatory, that adjusts the brightness of the background of the screen. Next up, we have volume, which adjusts the little bleep that hopefully you can hear in the background here. So that will adjust how loud that beep is. Then after that, we've got units. Our units again is the depth and temperature, so you can change that between meters and feet and Celsius and Fahrenheit. I personally prefer feet and of course Celsius, seeing as we are in the UK, but this can be changed if needs be. Next up, we have fish alarm, which I believe, if I remember correctly, I've never adjusted this setting, but I think every time that you see a fish or detect a fish on the fish finder, it has a little alarm, it makes a little noise, I believe. Don't hold me to that. Again, it's a feature I've never used, and it's probably in the menu that'll explain it a bit better, but really not important. We have battery alarm, which is our low voltage alarm. 3.4 volts is when it will start telling you that it's low on battery. I recommend you keep that where it is. We have backgrounds. So here I always run on blue, that's just my personal favourite, but you also have a white background that you can use, and you also have grayscale. Now this is very much personal preference. The white background is, I would actually say, it's probably more popular than the blue, but I've always liked the blue. Grayscale is good for deeper waters in my opinion, but I'm going to stick with blue because that's my personal preference. Then we have surface clarity, which again is all to do with the, well, what it says on the tin, surface clarity. It's all to do with the surface reading. I tend to find it doesn't make a massive difference, especially with the shallower water we have here. Again, something you can experiment around with, but essentially you have off, you have low, you have medium, and you have high. I just have mine set to off currently because that seems to work for me. We have noise rejection, which is, again, is all to do with the sensitivity setting. I always just recommend to leave that on high. Language in English, of course, you can cycle through the languages. And then a reset settings as well. So if you somehow muddle everything up and you don't know how to get back, you reset settings and it will default everything back to where it was originally. And that's it for our menu. And again, to get out the menu, we can hit escape. You'll see now, conveniently, I'm now running low on battery, and that is the low battery voltage meter that I was telling you about a moment, and you can probably hear that in the background telling me it's low on battery. Before it does run out of battery, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to display a couple of key things that I always need to advise on sonar. If you go into incredibly shallow water, so in the background here, you'll see the boat coming in, and it is incredibly shallow at the bank here, and you will see the sonar in a moment will start going crazy. You'll get obviously a hell of a lot of reading, but in a moment, you'll probably see it should start reading some pretty Larry depths and also reading fish that don't exist. And I just wanted to say that this is completely normal. It's because you have to have a minimum depth of around 4 foot for it to actually read accurately. When it's too close, it sends it into a frenzy. This is very common and normal on all sonars. Make sure if you're doing this, if it's doing this, make sure that your depth is actually decent enough. Anything too shallow will do this, and it may even ping up random fish that do not exist. This currently doesn't seem to be doing so, but just a little bit of advice really. That pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover on the sonar, so I think now what we'll do is we'll move on to a bit of GPS operation. So now I'm going to cover a few little hints and tips on the GPS side now to try and get the GPS as accurate as it can possibly be for you. When the GPS is set and working correctly, these things can be incredibly accurate. First things first is, here is our remote once again. In our top left here, you'll see the signal strength, or the GPS satellite signal strength, I should say. Now, before you go operating GPS, one thing you want to do is make sure that your signal strength, your satellite signal strength, really settles. It can fluctuate a lot whilst it's hunting for satellites. So what we'd usually recommend is turn the boat on, do whatever you're going to do, whether it's loading your rig or what have you, or if you're looking to go out and look for spots, leave it on for a good 5 minutes or so until the numbers sort of settle and stop fluctuating. Whilst it's climbing, and if you save a spot or try and do anything, it can actually cause it to be inaccurate. You want to make sure that you're, on a similar number to what it was when you saved the spot, for example. So as we can see here, the boat in the background, we've got 34 satellites. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the menu, press it twice, and we see compass calibration. Compass calibration is the most important thing for GPS accuracy. Now, you want to make sure you're doing your compass calibration at a good distance. This is roughly as close as you want to be, in my opinion. This is probably about 10 meters. If you do your compass calibration too close, it can actually cause the compass calibration to fail. Unfortunately, the remote does not tell you if it does fail, and when the compass calibration doesn't do it successfully because it's too close, then you will have all sorts of navigation issues. So if you find your GPS is misbehaving a little bit, first thing to try calibrating your compass at a bit of range. Again, I must reiterate, when you're doing your GPS, make sure your satellites settle and stop fluctuating. As you can see, we're still on 34, that's holding steady. What I'm going to do now before I do anything else is I'm going to save a home point. And again, you can do this through the menu or just simply by pressing and holding the home point button, and you'll see our home point will reset there. It'll say origin set OK. Now, you don't have to do this, but me personally, I always reset my home point every time I pop the boat in the water. So if I go and send my rigs out, for example, I'll resave my home point, and then the next time I refresh the line, or if I get lucky enough to catch something and I want to obviously send my rig back out, I'll resave my home point again. You've got to remember your GPS accuracy is to within 1 meter, but that's to your save locations. And the priority for its accuracy is to your save spots, not to your home point. Your home point can sometimes be a little bit off, and in order to keep it as accurate as it can be, just simply resave it every time you pop it in the water. And of course, make sure when you save your home point, you're not doing it right in front of your rods. Do it to the left or to the right. That's probably self-explanatory, it goes without saying, but you'd be surprised what some people do sometimes. Providing you've calibrated your compass and you've saved some spots, we'll now go through the menu of how to actually navigate to your spots. Before I do that, actually, I'll just show you a bit of recommended advice. If you end up using all your save spots and you run out, if you press and hold save over the save spot that you want to delete, it'll delete it for you. I'm just going to re-point that spot there so I can bring it back, so I can use this as a reference point. So let's say spot number 4 is a spot that we want to navigate to. All we need to do is hover over it, press navigate, and you'll see a sub menu comes up. Now this sub menu is quite important because this essentially is your autopilot. So the boat can actually just go to the spot and do nothing, or in this case you can actually ask it to open hoppers and return home. So you'll see currently there's a little blue N next to each one of these. That means no, and essentially that's left hopper, right hopper and home. So we're asking no, we don't want it to do any of that. If we change that to Y, so for example for left hopper I want it to open, you'll see that means yes now. I also want it to open right hopper. You press right hopper and that will navigate through that. And if you want to cancel it again, you just press it again and it will cycle through Y or N. I want it to essentially, let's say I want it to go to that spot, open hoppers, so drop the rig, let's say, and I want it to return home. So you're operating left hopper, right hopper, and then home point, and you'll see that will change to Y. Again, if you don't want it to return home because you're just baiting up a spot, you want to go to another spot, then again, you just press home again, it will go to N. And essentially what this will now do is, if I was to press navigate, it will now go and do all that for me. In the background, you can see it's already at the spot anyway, but you can see that's now got to its spot, which it was already at. The screen will tell me that it's just opened the hoppers, as you can see, and now the boat will start returning back home for me. One final thing that I'll cover, not in great detail because otherwise the video will go on even longer than what it already has, is the navi calibration setting. So as you can see, let's say my boat spot is saved here, but consistently for some reason it keeps going to the right, and let's say it is going here, let's say for example, what I would do, I would go into menu and I would go to navi calibration, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, the lower the number the more left, the higher the number the more right. So we're currently set to 85, and let's say that's what it's doing, it keeps constantly going right and I want to bring it left. I would personally do -10, save that number to 75, and just find out and see if that brings it in a bit more left. You might go over too much and you might end up going too far left, and that's where you can fine tune it with the +1s, -1s, +10, -10, for example. So you can really fine tune that. But again, absolutely imperative, make sure you keep note of where you were, just so that you don't get yourself lost. And if you want a save point, around 80 to 90 is the number to go for. So that pretty well covers everything that I can think to cover in this video. Now there's probably some bits that I've missed, so if there's anything in particular you want to know the answer to that I haven't covered, or if you've just got any inquiries in general, feel free to ask below or send one of us an email or a message. We'll try and help when we can. Now these things, these higher end boats with GPS sonar, it can get a bit overwhelming. There's a lot going on. But once you get your head around it, they really aren't too bad at all. Now, I know that's easy for me to say because I use these things every day. I work with them every single day. But I think compared to a lot of other models on the market, being all integrated into one system does make it a lot easier. You've not got any tablets or any apps or anything like that to worry about. And it honestly does make life a lot easier. So take your time with it, get to learn it. If you're struggling, hopefully refer to this video again, and I hope it helps. If there's anything else in particular you want to see, of course, let me know. It's very similar to like when you get a new phone, for example, and you sometimes have to sit there of an evening and sort of figure everything out. It can be a bit like that, but you will genuinely get there eventually. So as I say, I hope this video helps. And again, any questions, feel free to ask below. Thank you for watching and take care.